Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful day where we're actually honoring our veterans. Thank you. Today, I don't want to say it's our last webinar, but it could be our last webinar, right? It's our last episode of season 3, the CSA revolution. We've started this revolution 5 years ago, and it's time, right? So today, the final case study on or studies from both Seagen and Medtronic. And I want to introduce you to my panelists and thank you for joining us, ladies. Much appreciated. April Francis, ID Director from Medtronic, and also a FIXA team member, a veteran FIXA team member. Thank you for all your contribution. Barbara Voss, Senior Project Manager from Seagen. She's new to CSA, so she's got a lot to give, by the way. She's really diving through this, and she has some good information to share with us. And of course, the infamous Stephen Cook, who's been executing tons of CSA transformation. I'm not going to call it migration because remember, we do not migrate from computer system validation to CSA. There is no migration, okay? It's just a method, all right? Great, so we're going to start now, and if I can move my screen, awesome. So again, happy Veterans Day. Thank you for protecting our great country. We really appreciate you. For our attendees, listeners, thank you very much. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend.
And enjoy those discounts.
There you go. Another thing, reminder, recorded webinar, FIXA Town Hall. Of course, we've got a lot of recordings, but the Town Hall happened back in October 21st, where the entire FIXA team responded to tons of questions. Please visit our site with that specific link, and you guys can definitely listen to a lot of stuff specifically for those who are thinking or in the middle or whatever it is about CSA. And this is a very important message. So Monday is the last day to actually submit comments on the draft guidance. As you know, the draft guidance is in draft. That does not mean you cannot implement. You could, because nothing has really changed in the regulation. It's just a guidance. It's a method. It's a methodology. But the idea is to submit your comments by Monday, November 14, where actually your comments will go in the next revision of it. The next revision will be due within 90 days for the final release. Again, things could change depending on where the FDA is doing, okay? But it is very important. And again, a reminder, we've been doing all these webinars for the purpose to provide you all the information you need so you can eventually submit your comment to make it better, make it worse, whatever you want to make out of it, and also start the journey of CSA. Here's the webinar series. We've gone through 8 of them. Today's our number 9. All of them are recorded. Here's the link to all the recordings so you can visit, download the recording or the slides. As always, I'd like to thank the FIXA team members, various subject matter experts like yourself and I, and they're all from the industry, med device, biotech, pharma, have worked really hard. And of course, Cisco Vicente has really worked hard with us, driving this initiative. And again, congratulations, Cisco, for the release of the guidance, because I know he really worked really hard, specifically when it came to the attorneys of the FDA. All right, today's panel, we're going to have a Medtronic journey on automating CSA across the organization, and then Seagen journey of CSA, where Barb and Stephen, and the reason Stephen is here to support her, Barb is a senior project manager. She's not a CSV. So again, this is a twist, right? Stephen is supporting Seagen through the transformation, and we'll let Barb, of course, speak to it. But her view is really, really crucial here. And of course, April, she's going to talk to us about the journey since they were from the early adopter and also how they automated CSA. Yes, you can apply CSA, computer software assurance. You can do it every day. You could have done it 20 years ago. But what is the next step in computer software assurance? That's really what's important. All right, I think this is the last slide. I promise I won't talk too much after this. I just want to make sure that everyone is really grounded here in terms of the scope of the guidance and what type of systems. So we've talked about it. It applies to any system used as a part of the production or the quality systems. The guidance is not intended to provide a complete description of all software validation, right? If you need that, you have the GPSV that was published back in 2002, right? What I'm gonna jump to number 4 here, when final, this guidance will replace a section 6 in the GPSV, all right? Now again, there's no change of the regulations. All we're changing is guidances, okay? And then one more, what is out of scope is software as a medical device, software in a medical device. And take it from Khaled, and this is Khaled's opinion. This is for now, okay? CSA is literally the platform for advanced manufacturing. The risk-based approach, the critical thinking is not gonna stop here. I can guarantee it. But again, for the purpose of this guidance, SAMD and SIMD are out of scope. Finally, the question is gonna come, well, I'm in pharma. Does it apply to me? Yes. Please read the footnote on page 4 of the guidance. And for those of you who are saying, I haven't seen the guidance, where is it? We actually have it listed in the handouts. There's 2 handouts where you see the guidance listed there in the letter from the FDA. But it is very important to understand that both CDRH and CBER are both endorsed the guidance. CEDAR, ORA, and OCP have been consulted. And in the final version, we're going to see a whole different endorsement. That's about it. Next, the famous slide from Mr. Cisco Vicente. Just to remind you, this is a new approach to validation, right? You identify your intended use, you determine the risk-based approach, determine the appropriate assurance, and establish appropriate record. Again, we're not really inventing anything here that you haven't done in the past 25 plus years. Alrighty, now we're gonna get to the industry perspective, and the question is going to April Francis. April, thank you again very much for joining. You were a part of the early adopters. Yes, you went through the pain. Would like to hear the story about the pain. Would like to hear the story about the cultural change, and then what got you into to actually automate CSA, and why did you go from a CSV to automation, from CSA to automation? We want to just hear your story, okay? And Barb and Stephen, please feel free to comment, ask questions, bug her, do whatever you want. We just want to listen. Thank you.
Thanks, Khalid. So thanks everybody. Hopefully I can kind of share a little bit about our early experience. We had the pleasure of participating back in, I think we agreed it was about 2019. We started being part of this team and coming together with like leaders and thought leaders around this space, knowing we all have a similar issue and need. We have gone, the pendulum, if you think about it that way. When culturally you have very risk adverse leaders and individuals wanting to make sure that we had an abundance, thank you, an abundance of effort put towards validating the applications that our business uses. And we want to make sure they stand up and hold up to any kind of audits, and that they are supported by our, in our case, our IT organization. But one thing we learned through that journey, like Khalid said, it's at 25 years we've all been doing this. You get various skill sets coming into your organization of how to do the validation, how to appropriately understand what the scope of it is. And it's not an easy skill or talent to hire, just in general within the industry over the years. And so as we were looking at this, the critical thinking is key to having the right culture and building that relationship with your business partners, understanding that journey with them as well, because they need to trust that what we're doing here, we understand and have worked with them on, yes, this aspect or feature of the system is high risk, but these features are low risk, and do they agree with that when it comes down to how they operate their day-to-day? Well, to do that, it really took a combination of, okay, what type of skills do we have who are already supporting the CSA, CSV, and how can we simplify it for them if we're trying to upskill them into being able to do kind of this approach, right? If they're not familiar with how to do the risk ratings and elements with their business, how do we want to make this simpler on them? Because if we do want to shift that pendulum, it would have taken too much manual effort, if you will, having a lot of those conversations, doing it the old-fashioned way, I will say, Word document based, and trying to get the right pieces put in there to even see the value of what am I really simplifying here downstream. So what you're seeing on kind of this slide in our journey was what are some of those big pain points, and I think it even goes into the next slide if you want to kind of forward through. Oh, and then, I guess I should speak to this one quickly, just briefly, is another element that we obviously learned through this. It's all part of your ALM. It's not like I'm just going to simply jump right into testing and know that this is, where I start this journey. No, it starts way upstream into how you work with the business, your scoping of your system and your requirements. And then it trickles down into your other pieces of ALM. So when we talk about this journey, it's the full life cycle, not just what sometimes people conceptually think, hey, it's just about testing. It's not. So it does take the combination of skills and resources on your system. Like in our case, we have, business analysts or technical analysts, and then them and project managers, right? It's great to see Barbara on, because, you have to have project managers understand, this is part of their project life cycle too. And it has to be scheduled and planned for as well. And if they need to help have the right skills on the project to do this, they need to know what kind of skills do I need. So then going into the next slide.
And thank you for that. This is a great slide, because yes, CSA it's not just about testing, and it really the entire life cycle, right? And it continues on. There was one question one time asked to Cisco, does validation ever stop? It doesn't, right? You want to keep your system in a validated state. So you really want, as you adopt CSA from the beginning throughout the life cycle, you want to continue on, and it's going to make your life and the CIO's pocket life much better down the road.
Perfect. Yes, exactly. And I think some of the comments we get too is that you want to put the right rigor and emphasis with your business when they're, let's just think about the user acceptance testing. If you do that, right, you want to focus them on the key aspects that are critical to them running their operations and business, and some of the off-the-shelf, very basic things that you don't want to have them, have to do additional user acceptance testing. And same with, even our own IT folks, that if you're equating all types of testing to be the one type, that just is a burnout mode, and you're not really going after and spending that quality time on those critical areas, right? And that's what you really want to make sure is buttoned up with your partnership with your business. So some of the key elements of that helped us move early adopters. Now I'll say early adoption into automation of this, and your business might be asking, tell me my ROI I'm going to get out of this, right? Why do I want to invest in automating the CSA? And what we were encouraging here is, in addition to this risk approach, there are other elements here that you can automate within your life cycle, supporting your systems that further reduce the level of effort that your IT folks are. It's kind of like that pendulum, right? Where you say, I'm doing 80% on my documentation versus the 20% in that critical thinking and the real work that makes a difference. This, doing some of these, remove some of that guesswork with your IT folks and your business by, hey, what kind of deliverables am I doing here? What, when I'm picking these kind of risks for these requirements, what kind of then downstream testing can I do? What assurance can I put towards that? And had we not done some of these automations that, as maybe Barb will even mention, when you're new to CSA, it's not just natural, right? You are onboarding new people to this method and this approach, and this kind of helps get them there a little bit faster, because it drives it through a workflow that takes away some of those common questions or even issues that we run into. Hey, I'm missing this because the business analyst or the PM didn't know we needed this deliverable, right? It's a complicated process, they might say, but you can simplify it by guiding them through some of the automations that we put in place.
So, April, just a quick question. So when you kicked off and when you started the transformation, was the automation part of it as you started, or you started kind of really moved away from the classic on paper and you moved, and then at a later time? Can you just...
Yeah, no, thanks. That's a really good question. I would say that being part of the group who was like the FISCA group, where we were kind of ideating different areas that you might pilot this approach. Like, how would I take, maybe I'll pick on some like manufacturing equipment that often comes with CSA process validation, maybe triple duplicate of validation evidence just to get that piece validated. And we were trying to say, well, on paper, if we were to take a case study like that and kind of run through, what elements would this benefit, of the risking, we did do more of it on kind of conceptually on paper, and then realized, okay, if we're going to really get this to be further adopted, we do need to then, we took some of that data element from those who were even just doing it on paper-based, manual effort, and the savings there, and said, we're going to use that savings information and build the case, because we were already using automation tools for our CSA. How can we further enhance those, improve them? And here's the ROI that we could probably leverage to get acceptance to move forward with that implementation. So I would say it took some of the grassroots efforts to get that value first, and then we kind of edged into automation.
That's awesome. No, that's really great that you put it that way, because we've seen it. I've seen it back when I was with Baxter, where we take a complicated paper process and we put it in a system and we expect it to work. It sounds like you really did your homework and you did the right thing, and you did not use the term paper on glass, right? So that's
right.
That's great to hear.
April, how was that experience for your frontline validation leads who are used to paper-based, moving to a digital system? What were their challenges and their feedback?
Yeah, I think, going from the paper-based, so we had the majority were not paper-based. They were, in an automation solution, but they were more like, if you think about it, the doc repositories that are folder-based, right? Kind of just plop my documents in, route them for approval, there you go. But it wasn't really that sustainable. Like, when you keep trying to revise and when you make these kind of major approach changes, just think about, okay, I'm gonna have to start all over on my, analysis of my documentation, and how do I get it to be where I can link it to these things. So I was starting with the automation folks, because going from that model to more of a workflow driven, there is the hurdle even there, because it's all about, what are you used to usability wise and tools. Now, going from a paper base, I would almost say those individuals were ready, and so, those are usually the smaller functions and teams who you bring into the fold, and they were maybe just never had the right funding to get to that automated state. So I think they were more energized and engaged. It's like, I want to get out of the paper-based model. And I don't have any preconceived notion about what kind of tools I should be using. So that there was kind of less resistance, I would say, there. But it's more so the ones that are kind of coming from existing solutions, that this is the way I do it, and I'm busy on projects. I have to build in time to learn a new tool if it's only automated in, you know, one of your solutions. So it's different, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. Barb, I see you taking notes. Any questions for April?
Well, I'm curious how long the process took, or the project with.
Typical project manager.
Yeah. How long it took to
automate, to plan what you would automate and then actually do it. Because it sounds like the planning of, well, maybe this will automate and this we won't. What, you know, can you talk a little bit about the time it took, or the thinking you did around why you chose certain pieces?
Yeah. No, thank you. So we broke it out into two elements when we chose to automate it, and we went into two different phases. So like phase one was, what are those heavy hitters of making sure it's a workflow driven for us, so that we could just have people easily step through, you know, answer some upfront questions about their project, their scope of their system, and then it populates for them kind of the downstream deliverables. So that was a key one that we wanted to implement, to kind of help our end users from feedback from them, like, hey, you know, this is common feedback we're getting outside of even this approach. And then piggyback onto that, then we want to step into that risk-based approach, and this will be the way we can do it. This tool is easy to configure for it. And so our phase one went into, let's get this in place. Let's then use teams who are already using that existing solution, learn and adopt, and step into changing over to that risk-based approach. So then we can learn, you know, if you're already in this tool and you're now taking on a new skill set here to on your projects, you know, what's that delta learning curve? And then we started to bring in new teams into the solution to learn it as if they were coming from other solutions. But then we learned a lot just in that first phase, so much, and we always knew we were going to do that from our existing users, that, okay, let's plan for phase two. Like, what kind of enhancements, improvements do we need to further make to make it even easier for adoption? So that's kind of what the first phase took us, I think, about 6 months, I think, for the project. And the second phase, we waited 6 months to get the feedback, piloting, you know, using it, get further feedback to help them build out what do we need to do in that second phase project, which I think took maybe another 6 months, just because there was a lot of great improvements we wanted to put in. And I think it went with an upgrade too, right, for the solution. As always.
Awesome. April, one last question for you, I promise. I understand Medtronic is a very large organization, right? Has the CSA, I guess, implementation adoption, is it across the organization? Is it specific? Is there any other departments, divisions that are pushing back? No, not yet. We're not ready. You don't have to. If you can't answer, that's okay. But I'll leave it up to you.
No, I can answer. No, actually, you know, because when being on the fiscal group, it seemed like it was really hard to get this to be really visible, you know, within Medtronic, across the organization, outside of even our IT organization, by even inviting them to some of our events. But as soon as they were hearing about the upcoming guidance, the energy and momentum has just skyrocketed. So now it's like, okay, this is being established and well established within FDA, so that our partners in our manufacturing, like I was talking about, right? Some of the equipment in our manufacturing is a combination of processes, and when you have to do multiple deliverables, they're like, hey, we do need to get this simpler and easier on us. And even like some of the you want to do it simpler, faster, easier because of keeping up with even the industry like risks, right? Security risks, things of that nature, so that we can make it a little simpler to do the work. So I would say that within Medtronic, it's got great energy and in a group form to try to help provide feedback back to it. So it's nice to see on both sides of the camp, right? But that just means it's going to be broader adopted within Medtronic.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, we're going to give you a break.
Yeah, thanks.
Get a sip of water, and then we're going to switch now to Barb and Stephen to please share what's been happening, how it all started. What were the pain points? I don't want to talk too much about pain points because I'm tired of it. I just want to talk about progress. What is the next step? So Stephen kicking off for Barb, and Barb will chime in. How about that?
Yep. So I'll kick it off, Barb. I'm just going to go through the first section there. We engaged with Seagen in 2 phases. The first phase was really the computer software validation procedure, end-to-end, where we integrated in principles of CSA, CSA-based risk assessment, adoption of unscripted testing, working with automated testing within that. Roll that out with additional CSA-based templates, validation plan, validation report, the templates in between that. We brought in FDA for a presentation to executive management at the beginning. I'll let Barb talk a little bit about how that set the tone for the cultural change. We performed a number of CSA workshops within Seagen, practicing how to execute unscripted testing, looking at different examples of that. And a big piece of this was the change management. This initial engagement, since it went from CSV to CSA, really involved change management. And then in the second phase, we picked up some of the additional topics like periodic review, computer system retirement, again, templates, training sessions. Something I was very excited about in this was, we're living in the TikTok, YouTube age, where I say personally, I don't ever Google things anymore. I go to YouTube to see if there's a short video on it. And so what we did in Seagen is we looked at, areas where there's a gap in understanding and created these 3, 4, 5, maybe 9-minute maximum videos that were just topic specific that someone could go to and watch. I believe Seagen's calling them the just-in-time videos. And they can rewatch them whenever they need them, because you know what? You probably are not going to do a retirement every 3 months. It may be something you do every 2 years, but when you need it, you can go right to a video that tells you what to do. Again, change management was a core piece of this. With that, I'll turn it over to Barb to talk a little bit about the experience inside Seagen.
Yeah, so thanks, Stephen. We had a small team of 6 core members, and Stephen had asked me to list our lessons learned, so I think I'll jump to that, where critical in the core team was leadership who took ownership of the project. As a project manager, I've seen many different styles of leadership, and particularly Hillary, who led this project, really took ownership and drove the project and was empowered to make decisions. As you probably all know, there can be many different points of view about what needs to be done with quality or what needs to happen in this type of transformational change. So we had to have a very strong steering team and then a strong decider. And we actually had an escalation path up to senior executive if there were any issues where there was disagreement. So I think that was critical to resolving issues quickly so that they wouldn't drag on and hang on for months to be able to do this transformation. Another lessons learned that Stephen alluded to was we had a change manager on the project who developed a whole plan and roadmap for us to do our changes. One of them was, one of the key things I think helped too was the leadership sponsor held weekly office hours where questions could be answered, and we had for Seagen quite a large turnout of maybe 20 to 40 people on those calls, especially in the phase 1. There was a lot of interest in what changes were coming, how it applied to them. When we were doing also the 2 phases of the project, we had a SharePoint site that everyone knew about. We frequently publicized it, where we would have updates or have new reviewers, or have the documents to be reviewed by reviewers, links to those. We would do road shows to different departments, to like the project management office, the business analyst, the system analyst, all the different groups, the quality groups who would be impacted by the changes. And then Stephen helped us develop a quick reference card. It's what you would imagine, like basically what is CSA, how does it benefit Seagen, and it's just a card people can have in formally they'd be on their desk looking at it, but it's online so they can refer to it if they need to.
Virtual.
Virtual, yeah.
Thank you, COVID.
And then as Stephen said, we did just in time educational videos. These actually, people were watching them. We had 40 views of them before we even advertised they were there. So those were really popular, and people are referring to them and looking at them even as we're just kind of launching the change project, the change process. As you can see too, the project just completed November 7th. So we had a year doing this, and we're getting the pieces launched now. So I don't have any metrics or ROIs at this point because it's brand new. So we have our baseline going on.
But I believe there's Barb. Yeah, you have a bullet to it. There's currently 6 projects that are in flight in Seagen that are following the CSA methodology, and those are at various points.
Yeah, I was going to mention that we started the projects. Some of them started in July, basically, and we had a transition plan. So again, I think that's important for lessons learned, that the projects that are in flight, but also the ones that are going to start really soon after CSA is launched, that you have plans for them. And we had that by having CSA advisors assigned to each project as a team member, so that if there are any questions the different people have, project managers or whoever, about the new process, that there would be an expert there to help them.
Barb, can you, if you're at liberty to share what those 6 projects are, what systems they are?
I don't have that list with me.
Okay,
I don't know.
that's fair. Thank you.
So another, I think I'll jump down to, it really, well, I'll just go to the next bullet, where it really helped our team to have Stephen there as an advisor, because he could have the outside perspective of the direction to go. So even though there was knowledge internally in Seagen about CSA, it was great to have someone advise and comment on our own internal reviews. We had 30 reviewers go through 3 cycles of reviewing each document, and they aren't necessarily always in agreement. So part of it, we could, well, Stephen said, so it really helped to have Stephen as our trusted advisor in both phases of the project.
And I would say it really was collaborative, right? I mean, Seagen had some great feedback on the work that was done, that really, between Seagen and compliance group, I think we improved the quality of the documentation and the understanding within Seagen.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
And I'm just seeing common denominator between what April had mentioned and what you're talking about, the multiple phases, right? The change management aspects of it, leadership, right? It's top down, not bottom up, right? It's really important to get that engagement, awareness, training, getting the FDA to really kind of establish that. And you guys, again, you did it before September 13, where the draft guidance was released, right? So again, this is something to think of, that, you know what, you bought into it, you understand, you're on the right track. And it sounds like marketing is a key here. How you market bringing a new product, which is CSA at this point. So cool.
Yeah,
I did not like the theory reviewer thing. I was there's a little bit too much there.
well, I think everyone had an interest in it too. Like, I think to shift, maybe to challenge you on that, is part of change management is exposing people to the change. So a reason we had a lot of reviewers was so they were part of it, but also so that they would have that buy-in to the change because they could anticipate what's coming down the pike with, oh, these documents are changing this way, or this will be a new process. And then to manage their questions, we had those weekly office hours. So I actually think it's a good idea to have more people do that process or go through review cycles, because that actually is starting the change right there. You don't just launch the project and then, oh, we're going to change it over here. It's you want them moving through the whole process.
And you get the buy-in, right? When you get the reviewers, the impacted parties, you get their buy-in. They feel like they were listened to, whether or not their change of that document was incorporated. They get a response to it. They get a rationale as to why not.
Yeah, and we found previously when Seagen had attempted to more, we had to create more structure around the CSV CSA change processes, that there was more resistance, and I think it was often because people weren't included. So as a project manager, I'm looking at how the team can be included for their expertise, how the greater organization can be included so that the change is successful. So what I tend to do, just thinking of how people work, is if someone's really resisting it or very critical of it, to actually go toward them and talk with them more, because that ends up getting more their buy-in and they're more part of that process then.
Mm-hmm. That's good feedback.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I also wanted to say we had additional improvements as a result of incorporating CSA, that there were clearer role definitions on what exactly a system analyst will do, what exactly a validation expert will do.
Mm-hmm.
It really kind of calmed things down on projects to actually have people clearly know their roles. Also, an issue going on internally at Seagen was, well, how do we deal with validation with SaaS systems, with external vendors? So this project enabled us to do improvements in that. And also we understood we could talk about and help people understand more of the functional risk assessment value. So that, especially with a lot of the training Stephen did and the presentations, that helped people really wrap their heads around the risk assessment approach.
And we delivered as well role-based videos. So it was, I'm a business owner, what are my responsibilities? I'm the IT owner, what are my responsibilities? So we did like 5-minute videos on those as well. So somebody impacted could just quickly see, what do I have to do on a project?
Yeah, I really like that idea. But we implemented some role-based elements there too, but those little videos that you're saying just in time, especially if you're, at that junction, you don't do it very often, like you said, it's so critical to helping them out. You don't want them to have the barriers, and we're a global company, so some of those individuals could be, around the world and not have somebody to reach out to very easily.
And just as an example, like we tried to make the videos fun, entertaining, engaging, and something that somebody who's not a validation leader, doesn't do this every day, can understand. So as an example, when we were explaining Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, that video did an analogy of you buy a used house, you buy a model house, and you configure it to what you want, versus you customize your house and you get an architect and a whole crew. So it was using concepts everybody can understand.
Yeah. Nice.
That's awesome.
Good.
Yeah, and I'll even say it was fun. I know that CSA and fun in the same sentence may not.
I was going to say fun.
But we actually, as a core team, had a lot of fun with the videos and could could really help review them too on what made sense to us who weren't necessarily experts always on CSA, but we'd show them to different users or, view them just to see feedback and to have fun doing them too.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. April, listening to Barb, anything, any advice, any you can give her?
Seems like she's doing quite a lot.
Or maybe they did things better than you guys did.
I think so in some cases. I mean, you're completely right on the organizational change element and really bolstering that with some good resources. I think if I look back, the biggest challenge I'd say we experienced was, the lack of that, right? So maybe that hindered our adoption. And part of that is even with, like you said, we've been going forward with a lot of great improvements on the training, and by roles, but it's really that partnership too that you have to keep closely tied with the business analysts and the testers of partnering together instead of it kind of being here's the business analyst, they throw it over the the cube and here's my tester. It really, they do need to be on that journey together to see what's those critical pieces to look for. So I did see a question too about Agile, and
Yes, please.
it's a very key topic. We've definitely done Agile within our organization, but I don't know that we've had any that piloted the CSA approach yet in an Agile model. And now that's a big push, right? Like we want more Agile projects and capabilities. So some of the things that always go in my mind was when we were doing some of the automations is that are some of those automations make it easier on teams who are doing Agile to leverage that and package it up for their sprints into their epics and get to that simplified, set of, documentation assurance, if you will, and not prohibit them. Like, oh, this is only meant for waterfall. It's not. And so you just have to, though, open it up to them of, okay, how would you package and leverage the CSA in your existing Agile tools, right? Because there's some common ones that they do use. So it's a good question, and it definitely is encouraged to leverage that too.
And that's very interesting. You mentioned that you put the word agile and automation. So late last night, I was working on a slide deck that we're presenting to Gilead next week, and we're talking about what GAM 5 edition, the new sections in it that they actually published. It's all about agile software, right?
Mm-hmm.
All about automation, AI, ML. There's a lot of good guidance in there. So again, for those of you who have not really looked at GAM 5 edition, really CSA is built in and embedded in the entire GAM 5 edition, right? There's all about infrastructure, qualification, critical thinking section, testing section. It's so important to really look at GAM 5 edition, and thank you for mentioning that, because literally just last night I was going through this and looking at what was new in GAM 5 and what was updated and what was removed. So I think all of us in this industry are heading the right direction. So hopefully we'll get there and we'll catch up to the financial industry and the commercial.
Right.
Awesome.
Right.
I wanted to make one comment too, just as a project manager looking at this process, is that as a project manager, I think about risks on a project, and stepping back from what this whole initiative to change to CSA, it makes a lot of sense to me. Although the language is different or the content of what you're tackling, like most projects I manage I use a risk-based approach. So I'm going to look at the heavy duty risk areas and put more of my time and energy on those. And I'm going to, that area is going well, or those people are getting along just great, I'm going to leave it alone. So I think like looking
Simple.
at what you're trying to do here with overall your risk-based approach makes a lot of sense and seems a great way to spend your time with the issues that are harder and that you have to manage, really insert yourself and really manage well. And then the ones that aren't as critical, you just, can let them go. So
that's actually a really good perspective, Barb. Or Barbara, with the project management, I mean, that's just a natural skill for you. And the PMI got, and having that certification. So it's a good analogy of how it's maybe a good way to bring on a PM into, how does this relate, or how similar is it to that skill set that you already naturally have, typically?
Yeah, and it might be, like Stephen was saying too, a simpler way of thinking about the house analogy and what you're building. Or
Right.
when you go buy a car, do you spend a lot of time looking in the glove compartment? No, you're going to test the brakes, the accelerator, or the windshield wipers in Seattle. So it's really important for you to just spend your time where it needs to be spent.
Yeah.
So one of the points I'm reading through the questions, I just started scrolling through. We did have the FDA, Cisco come and speak at Seagen, and it was really beneficial for the leadership team, the executive leaders, to hear the changes and to see the FDA focused on this. The effect was, I think a lot of the executives in the different quality departments actually felt more confident moving forward. As you know, a lot of people in quality can be more risk adverse, so even making a change like this can be challenging sometimes if they've done things a certain way. So this allowed people to feel confident moving forward and help support the change throughout the organization.
And I think, Barb, that because we did that at the beginning and we did it at the director and above level, right? There were about 60 people in it, and they heard the message first. And so when concerns bubbled up from their teams, they had the response ready.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna jump in and take a couple more questions for you here. How do you ensure consistent risk assessments across multiple global sites and teams? And I think I alluded to it when I asked you, April, a little bit about it. Is it just where you are, or is it across? So do you think you have an answer for that?
Yeah. So I'll take some examples that, we have many enterprise used systems, and maybe a lot of you guys do too. And so when you get down to it, that's where I said it's like the really close partnership with your business. So because they're required with us to be at the table and agreeing and approving that how we risked the requirements on their behalf with them, they agree to it. Otherwise, they don't sign off on it. And so in some of that adoption, like, how hard was it to adopt? It's like, as you said, get the right high level leadership aligned that you're going to do this new and we're going to try this out. But those people who are in the different regions may be using the same system. They're all in that table looking at the same requirements, whether you're in Asia Pacific or you're in South America or the US, doesn't matter. These requirements apply to all of you. So do you agree per your, how you do your work, that these ones are critical and impactful to patients, or these ones are not really? I mean, this is just status quo stuff that just happens. You don't even think about it. It's kind of like that muscle memory of your brain. Like, what do you really just tuck away as just normal, you ignore as normal, versus what are those things that you're always kind of peeking out to look for? So by having it in a way where they're all looking at the same material and requirements and agreeing to it, that's how we got enterprise-wide type systems that are used, people to agree no matter where you're at in the world.
If I can add to that, April, I think too, when you roll out CSA and the CSA risk framework, moving away from the FMEA framework, it removes a lot of that subjectivity that you have, because what's medium to me may be high to April in an FMEA-based risk assessment, but it's a lot more clear cut when you're doing a CSA-based risk assessment.
That's a really good point, right? Keep it as simple as possible on the rankings and the ratings, And that will make it, so much easier to agree to. Yep. It doesn't mean that, let's just say, the highest denominator or the lowest denominator it was a low risk versus somebody else thinks it's medium. You can still apply, like, okay, well, we're gonna go to the medium level. That's fine. It still will save us and improve the outcome together.
Great. I'm just looking at the very last question that just came in, but that's okay. As per the new draft guidance, this only applicable for medical device. Then what is applicable for medicinal product, pharmaceutical? I can answer it, but April, would you like to answer it?
As we said, this is applicable to any CSA. It's not just within medical, it's pharma, it's all of those. I mean, it's a fundamental thing that even just normal software development lifecycle that you can leverage, whether you're even in a medical, this kind of space. It just, other companies can leverage this beyond just the, areas.
Absolutely.
Thanks. And you even point out it was in the guidance on what, page 4 or 5?
It's page 4. It's a footnote. And again, if you've been following the GPSV that was published 2002, and it's still applicable. And again, both CEDAR, ORA, and OCP were also consultant on that. Okay. Let's see. I know we technically ran out of time. I still see some people online, and there's few questions. Ladies and gentlemen, are you still available here? We can take a couple of questions. For Barb, how did you win over the people who had a fixed mindset and were in a position of influence? Any tips?
I alluded to it previously. We spent more time with them rather than less. I mean, the tendency, human nature, I think, is, oh, this is difficult, I'm going to go over here. So we actually engaged with those people more, had them involved in the steering team, had them involved with reviewing some of the documents sometimes so that they would feel a part of the process, and then actually looked at their concerns, like what's the resistance about, because they can have valid points that we didn't consider. So it's being open to a dialogue, and it moves the needle then, because then they're learning what we're thinking, we're learning what they're thinking, and can move people along.
Thank you. One question on unscripted testing, and I don't know if Stephen or April could take this, but here's the question. How did you tackle training on unscripted testing, particularly with testers who may not know the system very well?
I can tackle it from our perspective. We built that piece into our automation so that when the type of risk was identified in the requirement, it would open up the types of test modules, if you will, that can be used for that requirement. And the unscripted it just had that simple model there, and even had some text in there to kind of explain to the tester or test user, like, here's what you can put in here. I know we do a lot of what we call office hours, for different audiences. So like the testers, the business analysts, so that they can ask their questions too. And then I'm sure that we do have some training material for our folks, but you kind of have to hit it based on what people like. We'll use Yammer and post things, like, hey, here's some key SMEs who've done this, reach out to them, just to give people different ways to learn, and because everybody learns in a different way, which I like the video option. So I'm definitely gonna steal with pride on that.
Call Stephen.
We did a video on how to author and execute unscripted and scripted testing. Okay. The other thing we did in Seagen, and Barb can speak to this, is we held numerous workshops with impacted people who actually execute the test cases, where we collectively went through exercises of drafting and executing unscripted types of test cases, all the variants and flavors of unscripted. And we used tools that everyone knows. So we did an unscripted test case in Outlook. We did scheduling a meeting, canceling the meeting, right? So things that people know that they can relate to, so it's not computer system specific. And then the other thing I'd say about unscripted testing is it always helps if you have a draft work instruction or an SOP for that system that you're following along that the person can use if they're not already familiar with the system. And Barb, if you want to talk about the sessions that we held in Seagen.
Well, I think you covered it. That it was great. People really enjoyed it. A lot of people came to those, and it was fun drawing things. Stephen had us draw different unscripted test cases.
Did you do the pumpkin, Stephen?
Easter eggs, ad hoc Easter eggs.
One question.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Barb.
No, I just saw a question. Our videos, Seagen videos, are not publicly available, but I'm sure Stephen could show examples of some of this or help you create them.
Hey, Barb, you can sell them on the side, I'm just saying.
I may get in trouble for that. Yeah.
Stephen, I think this question is to you. How does the CSA assessment differ from FMEA as per Stephen's answer?
Yeah, so let's look at an FMEA assessment. You look at severity, right? And as hard as detailed as you try to get in quantifying what severity is, it's really difficult to quantify that severity. Like I said, what's medium to me may be high to April. And then you get into the detectability. Again, really subjective about how detectable something is. You look at the probability. Again, really subjective. How many failures am I going to have in a month, in a year, right? And you try to say like number ranges, right? But really, can you measure that? And so the CSA-based risk assessment, when you're looking at it, it's a completely different mindset change. You're looking at a requirement or a system. What is its potential to do harm to patient safety, degrade product quality, or impact data integrity? And you're looking at it from a direct, indirect, or none. And you get very precise in your definition of what direct, indirect, or none is. Indirect means I have downstream or upstream or other quality checks in place that are going to prevent that failure from happening. Right? And when you use that measure, it gets very clear cut whether it's direct, indirect, or none. And then probability gets replaced by complexity from Cat 3, Cat 4, Cat 5, out of the box, configured custom, with the fundamental assumption that as you go from established out of the box technology to custom developed code, your potential of probability, your potential for failure goes up. So your matrix looks at those two factors and then aligns your testing to it. Not only is it a much simpler, much quicker exercise to do the risk assessment, but it's actually giving better results than the traditional FMEA for computer systems.
And just to clarify, there isn't really in the guidance an actual tool provided, just like an FMEA is. What Stephen is talking about is technically developed in-house, and it's very much aligned with the FMEA, yet much simpler. But I would not go and Google CSA risk assessment. You're not going to find an actual thing. Again, you can make it what you want it to be. To me, when I look at FMEA, it's like you're checking, it's really more of a guessing game, to be honest with you. So, all right, with that, we're pretty much done. And thank you guys for staying technically 15 minutes more. I really appreciate it. Just some closing comments from, let's start with April.
Yeah, my closing comment would be, do not shy away from this and really try to optimize on the energy within the industry right now and get your leaders energized by this, because this is a great, a momentum time to make that shift within your organization.
Absolutely. Barb?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak. This was really fun, and I learned a lot from all of you today, so thank you very much.
Thank you. And I think I definitely going to invite you for another one because I loved your perspective. It definitely gave us a whole different perspective that we did not consider in the past. So I really appreciate you showing up and thank you so much. Stephen, last comments?
Documentation is not compliance, right? We've been playing this game for 25 years. Let's give volumes and volumes and volumes of documentation to show we did our job. But then the reality is we're delivering solutions that aren't quality. They're full of bugs. We're chasing issues in production. So documentation is not compliance. Documentation is not quality. Focus on quality. Focus on quality. Don't generate documents for an auditor. That's not what validation is. It's about making sure you're meeting the business use. You're meeting the requirements. They're getting what they need. And don't let validation get in the way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And for everyone who's been following us all these for this webinar series, thank you. I'm not going to say this is our last one yet. I feel like, I'm dropping the mic here. I'm not dropping the mic. If something comes up, yes, we will have one. You will hear from us. But again, thank you for all the feedback you've been providing us. Please don't forget to do the survey. And Bhavna, sorry, I forgot to do my spiel about the housekeeping. Well, it's too late now. But thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. And again, one more time, thank you for all our veterans. Happy Veterans Day. Thank you.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy
Thank you,
Veterans
guys.
Day.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.